Thank you to those of you who have put your cameras on, who give me some company here. I just got some unwelcome joined company when Darylyn jumped in a chair, pulled it out inside the room. So I now have an audience here. I much prefer you all like this. All right. Well, it's now 2 o'clock, so I think we'll get going. And we are recording this. So my name's Warren Speaker, everybody, and I am the managing partner of Continuing Life. We have a full agenda, so let's jump right into it. Our plan for today is I'm going to share some updates on the industry and on the communities. I'm going to try and respond to the questions you have submitted that include some topics about compensation and the coming increases in minimum wages. We will record all this so that we can post it to YouTube for those who are not able to attend right now. And my attempt here is going to be largely to stay high level and general. So some of the things I say may not necessarily apply to you or your community. When in doubt, I defer to your executive directors, your administrators, and your HR directors, and I encourage you to speak with them. I mentioned that I'm the managing partner of Continuing Life. Continuing Life is an organization that's here to partner with and support the communities. Continuing Life does not own or control the communities, but as some of you know, I am also an owner in some of the communities. So I'm going to ask you please to forgive me when I occasionally digress and use terms like our or we. Which is really emblematic of our view of as a partnership with you all and what you're doing. In the season of Thanksgiving, let me start with a heartfelt thank you. I have not done one of these calls in about 2 years. Wait a second, Ronnie, is that you?
That's me.
Is that Ronnie? Yeah, great to see you. Oh my gosh, I haven't seen you in years. Ronnie, by the way, is the first ever, or was first or second ever employee at La Costa Glen 20 something years ago. I'm sorry. It's great to see you, Ronnie. The camera's working. That's great. Okay, where was I? I haven't done one of these calls in 2 years. Mostly this is because the severity of COVID has decreased. It's really not been necessary. The other reason is, some of you know, I'm not frankly a huge fan of public speaking. But this also reflects 2 years that I have not been able to say thank you or great job on all you've done through these last couple of years of COVID. As you'll hear in a moment, the communities are well positioned for the future. The residents are appreciative, and I want to thank you for all you've done to get us here. During that last call that we discussed a couple of years ago, we talked about how the labor market was slowly improving. We talked about the importance of what we do. After all, while I like an In-N-Out burger, we are doing something that is a lot more important than flipping burgers. And we also finished by talking about the great progress that we had made at that time that we were making against COVID. So let me now lead with an updated status on the industry today. And I'll start with some of the positives. As it relates to COVID, the industry is largely back. We frankly get to socialize with our residents, and how great is that? Census has improved in the industry from the 70% level to the now low 80s, and there continues to be high demand for senior housing. And as a result of COVID, people now appreciate better the value of what we offer. Loneliness is real, and our industry has proved that we can help solve against that. Amongst those positives, there are also some real challenges. The economy, of course, there is uncertainty with the high inflation and prices continuing to go up. 600 skilled nursing facilities have closed in the last few years. Those of you in the space know this business is hard. There will probably be more to follow and close due to the changes that are coming. There are almost no new senior housing communities being built due to the huge increase in interest rates over the last year and a half. It's frankly too expensive. And this is coming at a time when the baby boomers are starting to hit in major volumes and need it more than ever. The industry will now be raising rates this coming year by probably 10% or more for the third year in a row. While your community fees, monthly fees, have not increased as significantly, they've also still gone up a lot, and our residents are hurting. And employee engagement in the industry has now declined for a second year in a row. And I recently read an article about that the number one worry of all workers is that they do not have enough money saved in an emergency fund to solve even a $1,000 expense should that suddenly happen. And I'm going to come back to this later. In short, the industry remains under a lot of pressure. Some of these factors are due to the macroeconomy, and some are specific to the industry. Let me now transition to things like our status. While the industry has seen 600 skilled nursing facilities close, we all have helped open 2 new ones in the last couple of years. Our communities and these 2 health centers should only be in greater demand going forward from the residents. And frankly, this isn't bad for job security. Hiring, as Lori told me this morning, is at its highest level that it has ever been. We have the highest number of employees across the enterprise. We also have the lowest number of job requisitions open. And while we're not there fully, there's still a number of departments or areas that need more workers. We are so much better than we were 3 years ago. Occupancy at the newer communities like Reata Glen or the Glen at Scripps Ranch are about 90% and moving steadily higher as they continue to fill up. All the other communities are at 95% or higher, in some cases as high as 99%. These are simply extraordinary numbers. And I encourage you to remember what I told you earlier compared to the industry in the low 80s. Although the rest of the industry appears to be largely frozen, we are pushing ahead to grow. There is one community that is currently under construction in Southern California, and another one that's been approved in Northern California that will lag a little bit behind. Both of those communities are experiencing record-breaking results. In the case of the community named Wisteria, they have had the highest conversion ratio, and that's people going off a $1,000 deposit list to actually selecting their residences. Highest conversion ratio we've ever seen in over 30 years. And at the Glen at Heather Farm in Northern California, they've seen the highest sales ever in the industry in our history. And finally, earlier this year, we received the Great Places to Work employee engagement scores. And for the second year in a row, while the industry may have decreased, our scores actually increased for a second year in a row. That culminated in Fortune magazine naming Continuing Life the #3 best places to work, best place to work in aging services in the entire country. Congratulations. You should give yourselves a hand. Thank you. I saw that, Monica. Good job. You actually gave yourself a hand. Congratulations. You should be proud. We could not have done this without you and your aiming for excellence. I'd like to now drill down to a couple initiatives and recap some things going on. This year, we launched 2 leadership conferences. And this was for supervisors, managers, basically people who are managing people, but below the director level. This was meant to fit with Star University, Star 2.0, Talent Development Review, Star University Online, et cetera, to help people in their career growth. We want to help develop a career path for folks, and I'll give you an example. Justin Carita joined La Costa Glen 16 years ago as a busser in the dining room. And in the ensuing 16 years, he has been a busser, a server, I think a lead server. He's been in plant operations. He's been in IT, and he's now a network manager. And that's network security. Basically, it's IT stuff. And he's leading a team of people. We want more stories like that. We need more people like that. We are now supporting 6 communities, 2 more on the way. We need people like you helping lead this and make this happen. We also launched Daily Pay about 1.5 years ago. That was meant to support those who maybe were tighter on money and were oftentimes going to payday lenders to get funds because they couldn't wait 2 weeks for their paycheck. We thought there was a better way, and it's worked. The fees are lower, much lower, and 9% of all employees are now using Daily Pay. We've expanded that service, or they have expanded that service with 2 new options, 2 new features. The first is they've come up with a free transfer. So even though the expense of doing a transfer that you could get immediately was much less than a payday lender, now you can get a free option that transfers the funds next day. I highly encourage people that are using this to consider this. Equally, if not more important, they've developed a module where you can actually direct some of your money to a savings on a debit card. And I ask you to recall my point about the emergency savings fund. Please, please, please take advantage of these services to help put yourself in a position financially so you don't have to have that worry. Daily Pay may be able to help that tool. There's savings and potential emergency savings. I want to give you all a reminder that the STAR Wellness Program closes on December 31st. This is an option for you to get up to 30% off your health insurance. If you can get either 150 points, which is 15% savings, 300 points is 30% savings. The end of the year is December 31st. Please get it in. It's not only good for your health. I'm trying to do the same thing myself. It's good for your pocketbook. And I'd also encourage you not to forget about the STAR Fund. And in this case, STAR has a different meaning. It's supporting team members at risk. Some may recall that this is where you can choose to make a contribution from your paycheck, tax deductible to employees. It's easy to set up, and then it's just on autopilot to take care of our own. Or if you've had a housing, medical, or funeral emergency, you can tap that fund, and people are increasingly doing so. And finally, we've got a new rollout coming next year, and that's called Boost. Boost will also then lead to the Moments Award. Boost was done in response to your input, including input that we received at the leadership conference. And what this is about is creating moments for both residents and employees. Let me touch on all that. The feedback we received is that while people really valued All-Stars, they wanted to see more opportunities to get All-Star points. So starting next year, if there is an All-Star that goes out, you can effectively tag it. I think that's the term. I'm not familiar with social media, but basically tag it and send it to your executive director or administrator for review. And they can then choose whether to boost that particular All-Star with points. Now, folks, this is not meant to be the kind of thing, hi, Warren, you're having, your hair looks great today. For one thing, I don't have that much hair, so let's be honest, that's bogus. But it's not that kind of thing, which is why we're asking the executive directors and administrators to be reviewing all this kind of stuff. But it is all about taking that next level, not just the day-to-day that we do, but creating these moments. And let me give you an example. At the Glennet Scripps Ranch, an employee walked past a resident and did the normal, hi, how are you? And the resident didn't give the fine. She looked sad. And he stopped and asked her and said, what's going on? And she said, well, Hershey died today. Hershey was her little wiener dog, you know, those old kind of dachshund or whatever those are, had died. And she was sad. Well, this employee remembered that experience. And he went back to his computer because he remembered something had happened and that actually they'd had a costume. I think it was Halloween or some party that they dressed up. And Hershey, the wiener dog, had dressed up along with his owner. The owner came as a can of mustard, and Hershey was the dog, right? The hot dog. And they'd gotten a picture of this. Well, this particular employee remembered that there was this picture. He went out, had it printed, bought a cheap frame, not cheap like nothing, but it wasn't $100 frame, right? $20, right? Bought a frame, put the picture in the frame, takes it to the resident, and absolutely made her day. That's the kind of moment we're talking about. That's the kind of moment we should be creating for our residents and for our fellow employees. We want to empower all of you to do that. So there's a policy being rolled out so you can do that and understand the guidelines, but we want you to do that. It's not just about serving them a meal or taking care of their nursing needs. Create moments for our fellow employees and for the residents. And at the end of the year, we will review all those boosted all-stars and come up with a Moment of the Year award, similar to the way we do the Innovation of the Year award. Anyway, there's a lot going on. So to that effect, we try and communicate by way of the bi-monthly Continuing Life newsletter. We use All-Stars. You all have your own community newsletters. I encourage you to keep up with those so you can know what's going on. We want you to take advantage of all these different programs, whether it's daily pay or moment awards, et cetera. And there's one more program I'm going to talk about, and that's the 401k retirement savings plan. Now, folks, you didn't really think you were going to get out of one of these calls without some kind of pitch on the 401k, did you? Those of you know that that is near and dear to my heart. Anyway, I'll start with a good job. We're up to 60% participation rate amongst all eligible employees. And of all those people who are participating, there's actually 90% of you are getting the full match. You're contributing enough to get the full guaranteed match. I'd love to see that get up to 100%, and so that nobody's missing out on their portion of the guaranteed match. Just so you know, last year, the match, 2022, the match was $2.3 million. What that means is that the average employee received a guaranteed match of about $2,300. It obviously varied by your contributions. I'd like to see everybody getting that, but you have to participate. So please do. Now, let me talk about a couple of improvements to the 401k plan that are coming. Starting in January, we are actually going to have auto enrollment in the 401k. This will apply to everyone who joined their respective community from June 2nd onward. This will not be retroactive to people prior to June 2nd or that have been here for 15 years. You may have a reason why you're not in the 401k, but from June 2nd onward, people will be auto-enrolled unless they opt out of the plan, and you may do so. But that should make it easier so that you can get your portion of the guaranteed match. The second change that's coming, and this was fairly recent, was in response to input we got from an employee asking that instead of doing a percentage contribution, 3%, 5%, 10%, could they do a fixed dollar match? And the answer was yes. So starting in January, you will actually be able to do a fixed dollar amount if you choose not to do just a percentage. Good suggestion, Rose. Well done. At this point, I'd like to shift to some questions that we received. The first question was, I believe, tied to SB 525, which is the recent legislation that was passed requiring a minimum wage for healthcare workers. I'll read it. There were several items here. And this starts by saying, will this affect both residential living and the health center or just one? Which departments exactly will this affect? All or only select few? When will this increase happen? And how do you plan to ensure that this increase is fair to other employees who may not be included? For instance, we would now have servers who are typically between 15 and 19 years old, making more than a manager in a department that may not have been a part of this increase. Given this, will you be looking at the staff wages across the board to ensure it's equal and fair, or will you only be changing the wages of those who I guess legally need to be changed? Okay, there's a lot here, so let me try and break this down. First, will this affect both residential living and the health center or just one? This legislation applies just to the skilled nursing portion of the health center. However, this may affect other departments too. Some of this, frankly, is going to take some time to play out, folks. Second thing says, which departments exactly will this affect? All or only a select few? It affects all departments in skilled nursing. And when will it happen? It takes place June 1st of 2024. Now, as for this longer part about, what are we doing and what's our approach? Let me just tell you, the communities are going to look at this holistically. I don't expect to see a manager making less than the person they manage. That doesn't make sense. In January, the communities are all going to implement their annual merit increases, which applies to almost everybody. But there will not be a second across the board wage increase mid-year when this hits in response to this legislation. The effect of this is, and our approach to this is going to be more nuanced. Not only because it doesn't apply to everyone, but we need to find a balance, right? We need to make sure we treat all constituents fairly. And that includes residents. I'll dive into this topic a little deeper with one of the other questions that's coming. And see if I can get more information or give more information. This next person had several questions, so I'm going to group some of them. It says, why are our all-star points taxed? I think if we are being rewarded points for doing something for the company, we should receive the entire balance of the amount. I won employee of the quarter. Anyway, I would like to be able to have the cash to do whatever I wanted with it instead of having to buy something specific on the All-Stars website. But if I exchanged it for a gift card, I would be taxed and won't receive the full balance of the money. And then a follow-on question was, why is the tax on the Employee Appreciation Fund so large? Well, folks, the federal government and the state of California would like their share of your money. I don't like paying taxes either, but this is not something that's unique to our industry. However, what we have tried to do to soften this blow a little bit is to pay the sales tax on these purchases. If you had money and you go down to, I don't know, Macy's, is that still open, whatever store, and buy something, you're going to pay somewhere around 8% or more in sales tax. And in this case, your community eats that 8% or whatever that number is, the sales tax, to try and help soften that blow. This employee's follow-on question was, another one was, what should we expect for raise increases in 2024 with the bills that are passing for higher hourly wages for fast food workers? Well, I already talked about how merit increases are going to take place at the beginning of January. That's already in process. Community leadership is already working with all departments to develop what we think will be the first ever mid-year monthly fee increase or wage increase and monthly fee increase to all residents to address this. This, not only the fast food wage, but also SB 525. And let me just quickly give background. AB 1228 raised the wage for all fast food workers of a certain size to a certain minimum wage. SB 525 raised wages for healthcare workers under a progressive system for those that are defined as a healthcare worker, which is, as I said, skilled nursing. In the last 30-something years that we've been supporting these communities, monthly fees have only been raised one time a year in January to residents. We have now put all the residents on notice that because these are very significant issues coming, that they should expect a monthly fee increase in the middle of next year, in addition to the monthly fee increase that they will expect in January. It's frankly just too early to determine what those increases are going to be. We also need to go through a regulatory process with the residents to develop those monthly fee increases that are going to be needed to support these wage increases. So it's coming. I do want to set realistic expectations here. Some employees are going to see an increase of several dollars an hour. Others are going to see increases, but not that significant. And I would expect that there are employees that will see no increase at all, other than the merit increase that obviously comes in January. If you attended the road shows that Daryl and I have done in the past, you may have heard me say, I wish we could pay everybody $50 an hour. But as soon as we did that, this product becomes totally unaffordable to the vast majority of residents. They would move out, we would go bankrupt, and then no one would have jobs. That's not where we want to be. We have to be responsible. I'd remind you that last January, or this January, January 2023, we had the highest ever merit increases in our 30-year history. This coming January, we're going to again have what I expect will be an above average merit increase. I don't think it'll be as high as this year, but I think it'll still be above average. And then we're going to have these new minimum wages coming, whether it's the AB 1228 or SB 525, the fast food and healthcare minimum wages coming. We need to rethink how we do business to make sure we can keep this reasonably affordable for our residents. We may need to cross-train. There may be new job descriptions. There may be shrink as people choose to leave. Some of this will result in opportunities for growth and career development, but we're all going to need to work together to see how we rethink and approach this to keep the business viable and to make sure it's affordable for our residents. We are reasonably well positioned for this, and I see opportunity in the future for many people. More to follow in the months to come. And the last, do we have time for one more question, you think? Well, if you need to drop off, I'm not going to be offended. Go ahead. This last one, and it was a long one, so I'm going to paraphrase this, says, this is a very tough question for me to ask you. From here on out, our workforce is shrinking. It's an unfortunate fact that we must come to terms with. As a company, how will we combat this issue? Can we get ahead of it? With fast food rates rising beginning April 2024, will we do an increase in wages to attract talent before every business raises their rates because they are forced to do so? What is our strategy to get ahead of this? What is your mindset and plan to combat this? I know it's complicated and a difficult question with no easy answers. Well, you're right. This is hard. And we need to balance speed with prudence, because ultimately the residents all pay for this. You're right that large fast food operators will be raising their minimum wages in April. However, there are others that are simply going to go out of business because they cannot afford this and they will not be able to compete. Likewise, when the minimum wage goes up a little bit later in healthcare in June, that's also going to put impact on wages. And just as I shared earlier that 600 skilled nursing facilities have already gone out of business, so too will more. Some will go out of business in the near term, others it'll just take a little bit longer. We should actually become a fairly attractive place for some of those people to land. Those whose businesses have gone out of business, those workers, we will probably be viewed as a great place to work for them to come. We will work thoughtfully with all the appropriate and affected departments to address this. We'll respond appropriately and we'll be really deliberate with our timing. Now, these are the end of the questions. But before we leave this topic of compensation, I want to just throw out one more thing to y'all. Just like this last January's merit increase was the highest ever done. And I already said I expect that this coming January to also be significant. And then we'll have these merit increases or the minimum wage increases coming. Please, please, please use this opportunity to redirect some of those increases that are going to be coming your way into either your 401k, some savings account. If you want to use the daily pay, you know that is now coming as a tool to help you save money. Use this as an opportunity to redirect the money before you can actually spend it. It's a little trick. It's just a mental trick. But if you do that now, I promise you, years from now, you will thank yourself. Please consider it. It's a unique opportunity. Now I am almost out of time, so let me wrap it up. My opinion is that these last 3 years of COVID and working together in person has maybe in hindsight been a bit of a gift. I believe that we are more connected than all these people who are stuck working from home or who have chosen to do so. The loneliness that they're experiencing, the mental health issues that you read about, they are real. Meanwhile, I think we can take great satisfaction in not only what we've done to keep our residents alive and engaged, but also keeping ourselves a little mentally healthier in the process. So when I opened this call by saying thank you, I meant it. I also speak on behalf of the owners who are also deeply appreciative. And shortly after Thanksgiving, the residents are going to get to express their appreciation to you for all that you do. And that's in the Employee Appreciation Fund. And I expect that in spite of the financial challenges that they also are experiencing, they will be generous as they so often are and cannot wait to show you how much they appreciate what you do for them. You have earned every bit of it. I was reminded of that this week when my dad sent me a couple of articles from the New York Times about caregiving for the elderly, particularly in this case done by family members. The stories were absolutely heartbreaking, but they were also an amazing reminder of the value of the services we provide and what we do, and how important it is, not just to our residents who get this great care, but also to their families. Thank you for what you do. Please keep doing it. And I hope you have a very happy Thanksgiving.